Hi there. Welcome to Productivi-Tree. I'm Santi Tacoronte, and I'm here to help you succeed and be happier. In each episode, we'll explore new ways to work smarter, manage your time better, and grow as a person. We'll share fresh ideas, find ways to improve, and help you become your best self at work, in life. Join me as we learn and grow together on Productivi-Tree. Michael Stein is a serial entrepreneur, filmmaker, and podcast host whose life has been anything but ordinary. Diagnosed with behavior disorders as a child, Michael found the inspiration in the movie Rocky, leading him to become a fitness trainer at 16 and a stand-up comedian by 19. He went on to promote Hollywood nightclubs, starring the original short film The Dirk Diggler Story by Paul Thomas Anderson, and later pivoted into entrepreneurship, founding tarpsplus.com with just $13 in his bank account. The company became a multi-million-dollar success. Along the way, Michael produced award-winning films, launched charitable projects like Tarp Aid, and now hosts the LongShot Leaders podcast, where he celebrates underdog stories of people who turn long odds into big wins. If you're into data, productivity, and working smarter, not harder, check out my newsletter, Cut the Hype, Cache the Data. Every week I send you quick tips, tools, and insights you can actually use. No fluff, just results. Sign up in 10 seconds at santiagotacoronte.substack.com. That is santiagotacoronte.substack.com. Michael, welcome to Productivi-Tree.
Pleasure to be here. I'm excited to get into it with you today. Thanks.
Michael, your background is incredibly diverse. Nightclub promoter, CEO, actor, comedian. What is the thread that connects all these experiences?
I think it's growing up with a lot of failure and also, your upbringing of your parents, to do as best as you can and to be to hustle. That was a word, growing up as a kid in the 70s, there would be a song called The Hustle. My dad would, he was a homeless street kid in New York. So he never was educated above the 8th grade, but then he became a multimillionaire, lost it, but then, kind of navigated out of it to have somewhat success again. So I think that seeing the algorithm of that failure and success on my mom's side, her family escaped the Russian concentration camps. So just seeing this kind of like, struggle and hustle and taking pride in hustle and being okay with failure, I think, when it came time for me to do different things, I said, well, this is just part of my growth as either as an artist, as a business person, as a human being, and that's why I always looked at things.
You famously built $100 million company. Wow. And all from the ground up. Can you take us back to the early days and share the moments when you decided to go all in on your entrepreneurship?
Right. So my first job, my first, foyer as an entrepreneur, I failed miserably in the tool business. I graduated high school the day after I started a tool business, and I didn't do well. And then I became like 6 months later, I did stand-up comedy and got a lot of people there. So I became a nightclub promoter because which had nothing to do with stand-up comedy, but I was able to bring a lot of people to my stand-up routine. So then nightclubs were like big in the late '80s. So I did really well with that. Met a lot of people, and I tried to become a filmmaker, and I did some films, uh, taking through a fast track of many years of like 7, 8 years of working in production, producing, writing, directing, acting. And I did a short film, won many awards, got bought by HBO, and just I got close to a movie deal because that's how you get a movie deal in Hollywood. You do a short film, that's one way to do it. And then you get a lot of meetings. And I got close to making my own movie, but no movie deal after this whole thing. And I said, I gotta become an entrepreneur again because I want to make my own movie. So it was out of desperation. I was broken in debt. I said, I'm gonna, the internet's still pretty young. I want to sell a widget. I want to go back to selling. I don't want to go back to selling tools because back when I started, there was no internet, but I was like, what can I sell? So tarps was an ad item in a catalog that my dad, who was kind of struggling his way back in doing the old fashioned tool thing. And I said, here's a simple item. A lot of people need it. It's you could use it for camping or emergency or whatever. I said, I'll just try to sell this on the internet. And I call it my tool, but my movie business, because I said, this is going to help me make money for the movie. This is a side thing. And within the first 8 months, I made, well over $250,000. And I said, okay, I'm on my way to make a movie. And then like a year later, I was able to make a movie called Love Hollywood Style, which we casted myself, wrote, directed, produced, and acted with Faye Dunaway, Andy Dick, Coolio. And I was like, okay, I'm acting. I was able to make this movie with the money from being an entrepreneur, and I'm acting with an Academy Award actress. And I said, okay, this is great. It almost bottomed out my business because it was like, it's expensive to make a movie, but I was so addicted to that. By the time I was done with that movie, I said, and that movie didn't make all its money back. I said, I should take care of this business. And ever since then, I've been able to do other projects and things since then. But I really nurtured the business, and it's earned well over 100 million since then, which is pretty good. It's not $100 million company; it's earned over $100 million since then, well over that. Since then, the impressive thing is I was broke in debt. I had $28 in my bank account, so I guess you could say I had debt on top of that, though. And I was able to build a Yahoo store and open up tarpsplus.com. And it's done well ever since. And that's how I started working out of my rented shack in Sherman Oaks, California. Started to set up canopies and hold inventory in the backyard there until I was kicked out by the LA City and said, you got to get a warehouse. And then I moved to a warehouse. And I bought a warehouse, and it's grown exponentially ever since.
Many people feel stuck in a 9 to 5 mentality. I mean, you have gone from actor, from movies to tarps. So, what mindset shifts did you have to make you embrace the long shot mentality?
Well, I grew up as a long shot. I do the podcast Long Shot Leaders, and I consider myself a long shot. I was born premature health issues, ADHD, whatever they call it. They didn't know I was put in a special needs school. They didn't have ADHD, that moniker when I was a kid. And growing up with my dad, who's he was not around a lot, but I always hearing the story. He was homeless. He ran away from the orphanage when he was 8. My grandmother, I was the youngest, so I had to sleep in the same room with my grandmother until off and on until I was 9 years old. So she would tell me my bedtime story was how she escaped the Russian concentration camps. I always consider myself a long shot, and I, was always awkward. I really never had any success. I make people laugh. That was the one thing I was able to do. And then I said, okay, well, I have success doing that. That's good. And then I saw the movie Rocky, like most American kids. I said, here's a guy like me. He's funny. He tries real hard. He keeps on getting knocked down, keeps on getting it back up because I'm a hustler. The only thing difference to this guy is that he was physically fit, and I had a lot of health issues. So that day, every day, I'm going to work out like Rocky. So that was like I was like 11 or 12, and then since then, I worked out every day. And by the time I was 16, I became a physical fitness trainer. I was like one of my first jobs. And I said, oh man, another thing, time plus effort equals success. And that's kind of like how that was my mentality. Time plus effort. It doesn't matter how poor of a student I was. Hey, my dad never finished the 8th grade. He became a multimillionaire. And he made a lot of mistakes afterwards. But at least I can learn from those mistakes. Time plus effort, and then just growing, building my muscle to be an entrepreneur, my muscle to be a stand-up comedian, my muscle to be an actor, my muscle to be healthy. And that's what I've stood by ever since. And it's a long distance run. So I knew that all these mistakes that I was doing would be learning experiences. And that was always been my mentality.
You've mentioned starting a business with $20, $28, I think you said. What are the top 3 strategies or the top strategies for bootstrapping a business in those circumstances?
Okay, so I was really methodical about it. I'd love to tell you the story, like when you see the movie Chaplin with, Robert Downey Jr., how he says he became Chaplin and the cane just like enters his hand and the hat rolls on his head and the mustache just kind of like came to him and all that. No, I think a lot of people should really kind of go on the internet, and this is what I did, back in 1999, and I would say, okay, where's the opportunity? You know, what's the competition look like? How much can I get the product for? What are people selling the product for? Let me play this out in my head. Can I see this, scaling? What's the upside? What's the downside? Ask myself critical questions, the who, what, where, why, what, and how of the situation. What's the potential? So then you start to look for that, and looked, long and hard for the opportunity. I was like, okay, I can get this widget for a lower cost. I see the competition's not selling it for this much at all. I said, I see there's an opportunity here, and I could see myself doing this, and it's sustainable, it's doable, and you start to kind of like, so my strategy is that, get scope of the situation. You're gonna probably ask me, what's your 10-point, strategy or whatever. But the first thing is doing anything is get scope of the situation, the who, what, where, why, when, and how. And then Toyota asks like 5 whys. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Like DS Demings after World War II taught Toyota how to become a critical company. And they said they adopted something called the 5 whys. And then when something's wrong with their engine or something, they say, why is that? Well, why is that? Well, why is that? Why is that? And ask 5 times. I like to ask, the who, what, where, why, when, and how at least 5 times to get total scope of the situation. Hope this is not too long-winded. And then when you get the scope of the situation, then you start to take immediate action to give yourself momentum psychologically. And also, because if you would schedule something, if you talk about something, it's a possibility, but if you schedule it, it's real. So that's immediate action. If I want to be able to get in good shape, well, I'm going to create a schedule. I'm going to do something immediately. Like when I'm able to do that workout, force myself to do something immediately. So that's kind of like, how the beginning of the business was, you get in there, you get scope of the situation, you find your opportunities, you take immediate action, you start to write down as much as you can, you start to, you know, have, what's your end goal, and you start to kind of mold this. You don't have to have all the answers in the beginning, but, start to mold this. And that's kind of like the incipient stages of my business and starting a business from bootstrapping without any money. Seek the opportunities where you don't need money also.
Building a sustainable business looks more like a marathon than a sprint. So, what are some key principles for long-term growth and avoiding, number one, burnout, and also something that I see more often now, getting bored?
Okay. Well, the last two are kind of related to each other, burnout and getting bored. But getting the uh what was the first part?
What are the strategies to build this long-term growth without knowing that it's a marathon, without getting burnout or too.
Scaling, pretty much, right? So the first thing is that you want to be able to, be conservative with saving money, but also be aggressive with how to make money. So it's a fine line, so you want to keep you always in business, even when, you want to take calculated risks sometimes with money, but you got to be, sometimes you don't have a choice. You're like, I have no choice. I only have X amount. Um, but you also want to say, when it comes to advertising, you have to really find what is going to work for you and then quadruple down on that. And then you want to be very cognitive of like what's not going to work, as far as spending money marketing wise. Because look, that's what's going to help you scale. That's what's going to help you grow. This is going to be marketing and advertising. What are the KPIs, the key performance indicators that are going to show you on how to make this happen. You want to be uber hyper about that and say, okay. The other thing is that, in the beginning, you want to romanticize staying up all night or doing whatever you got to do or every moment for your business. It's clay. You want to mold it. You want to say, I can, you're in the driver's seat now. So we just focus on that. And this kind of like helps you into the lack of burnout. Always realize that if you're an entrepreneur, you're in the driver's seat. That's a liberating feeling. So if you really start to really think about, hey, I can control this. I can wake up 2 o'clock in the morning if I wish, and I can mold my business. I can do things to help it move forward. That's liberating. Now, as far as burnout is concerned, you know, you have to really kind of always focus on what are the goals. There's thing goals, there's material goals, there are, you know, spiritual goals, all kinds of goals. They all help you motivate you. And also pain. You want to focus on if I don't do this, so basically it's pain and pleasure principle. And you just want that's what helps you stay away from burnout because everybody gets burnt out and say, well, wait a second. If I don't do this, what kind of pain will that bring me? And if I do that, what pleasure will that bring me? And then you break down your pleasure into your thing goals, your materialistic goals, your spiritual goals, your all your health goals, all the things that are going to move your blood. And that's kind of like the strategy that I do.
How has the movie industry influenced the way you conduct other types of businesses?
Well, that was really good because I wanted it so bad, and there's so much rejection, and there's so much, growing up in Los Angeles, there's so much pretentiousness, rejection. There's a lot of positivity too. Growing up in Los Angeles, there's a lot of very very personal development is very prevalent there. So I was able to grow up not in a place that was about psychology and a lot of big melting pot. So and personal development's been a big part of my life. So getting involved in the movie industry, I was able to really learn how to and also stand up comedy to learn how to deal with rejection, learn on how to force yourself to be a writer, to be a director, to work with people, to be creative, to be a critical thinker, to really sit and think and strategize. You don't want to write, direct, produce, act, you want to do those things. To learn about human psychology and break down a character and how does that coincide with, personal development psychology? And likewise with stand-up comedy, you know? When I got to, when I did a Tony Robbins, which I've done like everything it's never done. I heavily got involved in personal development. I went back to do stand-up comedy, and I got into 6 Human Needs psychology, which is a very why that the theory behind that is why people do what they do. They do it for 6 human needs, emotional needs that they have, feel significant love, contribution, growth, security, and significance. So these human needs, if you give somebody that while you're doing stand up, you make the crowd feel secure, important, connected, love, like feel like they're contributing to something. You're trying to if I can make these people feel like those 6 human needs, then it's going to help me enroll them. You know, that's same with business, same with acting, same with whatever. So the movie industry has helped me integrate all these things, and it's really helped me a lot. It's also helped me see a lot, a big part of the world. Being in that circle. You know, when I was 21 years old, I would met the right people, get flying around a Learjet, meeting people that have really done a lot with their life. That was really impactful for me. Um, and that helped me grow quite a bit and see other parts of the world and the possibilities.
What are some common misconceptions about entrepreneurship that you like to dispel today?
That you need money. That's just one avenue, to be an entrepreneur. Um, that you need it needs to be the right time, or you're not young enough, or you're not old enough. It doesn't really matter. There's no rules here. Those are all just limiting beliefs. You know, you have to really kind of seek out. So there's a bunch of them that people give themselves excuses on why they, you know, well, I can't be an entrepreneur because of this, or I'm not built for that. This is all bullshit. You just really need to find anybody can be an entrepreneur. You need to find out your thumbprint, what will enable you. Where's your strength? What People say, well, I want to feel passionate. Mike Rowe, who's a famous guy out here, he does a TV show and he talks about passion versus opportunity. You can be really passionate about something. I was really passionate about being, an actor, filmmaker. I wanted to say I like to thank the Academy, and I've had friends that have done that. Um, but at the same time, you also look at opportunity and say, wait, what's my long-term goal here? I want to be successful in not just one area, but other things. So seek opportunity because the myth is that, oh, I have to do it if I feel passionate about it. You'll feel passionate about it if you're successful, and then you can still stick with your passions. Who knows? Maybe your opportunity will pay for your passion. So those are some of the myths. Try to find your thumbprint and your ability and where opportunity lies for you. And if it coincides with some of your passions, that's a win. So that's what I have to say about it.
You're big on personal development and you have a background in human needs psychology. How does understanding these needs contribute to effective leadership?
Well, you'll understand that you don't get upset at people more because then there's people do try to attain, people will violate their beliefs in order to meet their emotional needs. So somebody will say, well, I believe that, but I'm doing this to feel people, whatever they do, you might get angry at somebody, or you might say, why are they not listening to me? More often than not, test it out. Once you get good at this and you start to study it, everybody's trying to meet an emotional need. Why do they do that? They try to do that to meet it, to feel more secure. They try to make themselves feel more significant. They tried to do that because they wanted to feel connected. They tried to do that because they wanted to feel loved. They tried to do that because they wanted to feel like a sense of contribution. And a lot of these are integrated. They try to do that because they try to feel a sense of variety. Why would they, sacrifice that? Because they wanted to feel a sense of variety. They wanted to change. They don't want to keep on doing the same thing. So all these are these six human needs. Once you start to manage people, you don't get upset because, like, okay, they either tried to get that need through a negative vehicle or a positive vehicle. Now we've all tried to get needs through a negative vehicle. So it's helped me be more patient. It's helped me kind of make better choices. What's a positive vehicle? Well, the triad of a good decision is usually, the three things. If it's good for me, if it's good for you, it's good for the greater good. That's usually going to be a good decision. Generals and presidents that have to go to war, that's compromised and that's tough because that triad can't be existing for that because it's not good for the greater good to go to war. But usually for an individual decision, it works. It's not perfect, with science, but it's almost a perfect art form. And that's kind of like, how I could tell people to start to analyze that, kind of think about that. Why did that person do that? I would definitely get into personal development, whether it's Tony Robbins or something else, to learn more about this as well, because it can sound like kind of archaic of what I'm talking about if you haven't studied it.
Hey, quick break. If you're into data, productivity, and working smarter, not harder, check out my newsletter, Cut the Hype, Cash the Data. Every week I send you quick tips, tools, and insights you can actually use. No fluff, just results. Sign up in 10 seconds at santiagotacoronte.substack.com. That is santiagotacoronte.substack.com. Now back to the episode. You have suffered ADHD, dyslexia, health challenges. What are your top strategies for overcoming obstacles and maximizing your potential?
So, scope, again, if somebody told me as an adult that I had ADHD, I didn't know why I was putting and something at UCLA. They put me in a school for an all school for a year. I didn't know why. It's not, I'm just different. And then thank God I grew up in Los Angeles where you're being different or, I'm eccentric or awkward. That's a gift. So a lot of people thought he's special in a good way. I feel bad for people that don't grow up in that, where that's kind of like, lauded. So I kind of looked at it that way, but I would strategize on, okay, if you have weak points, say, okay, I accept that might be a weak point today, but I could turn that into a strength tomorrow. And really start to analyze. So when somebody told me I had ADHD, and I like 10 years ago, I looked at it and I was like, okay, I check every box of what they're saying here. And then my daughter got it. Like, I don't know if it's hereditary. I don't know if I believe in this, but I'll tell you what. I'll look at the strengths that they say ADHD gives you. You got Einstein sitting right above me, right? They say he had ADHD. I'm like, okay, great. I'll grab onto that. Then you take the things that might be challenges for you, whatever you might have, and say, well, let me try to work on those and see how I can combat those things. So that's how I look at everything. It's an opportunity, and then inner dialogue is really important too. So how do you change your emotions? Because that's what the lifeblood of the engine is, to help you forward. And I would ask myself empowering questions as opposed to disempowering questions. I would spend maybe about 20 seconds on my problem and say, okay, I acknowledge there's a problem and I accept it. Now I'm going to ask myself empowering questions like, what's great about this? What can I learn from this? What's funny about this? How can I use this to my advantage? What's interesting about this? And I would start to stack those rather than saying, "Why does this happen to me? What's wrong with me? Why did I do that?" Those are disempowering questions, so I would concentrate on those. And that's part of the algorithm of, like, how I would start to, deal with adversity.
Michael, the business world, and you have mentioned in this interview the word hustle culture. What is your perspective on work-life balance and sustainable success?
So you wanna be, there's levels of consciousness. They say that, it's not, Maslow's, belief of the table of consciousness, which is a theory in the 40s and 50s, and I do think it's kind of like a great find. So you wanna be integrated. Infancy consciousness, there's a power god, or tribalism consciousness, there's a power god, I will control the tribe. There's law and order, there's striver driver, which is an entrepreneurial consciousness. There's like global, which is like, more of like a consciousness level of, like, it's higher. And then there's like a level of great, of integrated. They say Gandhi had levels of being integrated on all these levels of consciousness. And the way to strategize that is to basically, you want to be able to ask yourself, what what what's my priority, as far as that's concerned. Uh, so I don't know if that's answering your question. It's like the life balance is, you want to be able to have all of these things integrated, you know, to have a higher consciousness level. It's great that you want to be an achiever, and that's important. And there's time and place for you to do that. When you get to a certain age, you're gonna want to have a fulfilling life, and that's part of success. Your health is part of success. It works integrated with your finances, your relationships. How you handle relationships is how you're going to handle your finances. How you handle your health is going to handle your relationships. These are all integrated, and you want to make sure that you have a level of consciousness, and you want to be integrated, because if you're not going to be to your full potential. You're not going to make as much money as you can. You're not going to be as healthy as you can. Your relationships, I'll tell you what. You get a bad husband or wife, you'll see how well your finances are going to be affected. Yeah, that's going to affect so every decision is important, and every avenue in your life is important. So balance it well. Sometimes business has to take, precedence. You have to concentrate on that more. But there's a time and place for everything. You're going to have to navigate that, and really, be careful on all that. I'd say, as far as Asia is concerned, when you're in 20s and your 30s and even 40s, that's the time to spend a lot of time on making money in your business, but don't neglect your health or your relationships. But you will need to double down on making money, because that's the time to really strive. So as far as that's concerned.
You host a LongShot Leaders podcast. What are some recurring themes that you have observed in the leaders that you have interviewed?
There's the algorithm. I'm always searching for an algorithm of, like, what has made these people successful. And I've come to a conclusion, in these, I think I'm at, like, because I do two other podcasts. I was doing four for a while. One for outdoors, one, Bolator, which is a brand of mine. We're just launching the DIY Not podcast, which is for my other company, Torch Plus, which is the one I started in 2000. And Longshot Leaders, the main one, that I really kind of like. I'm always saying, what's the main thing? So here's the main thing. A lot of people that are successful in any way, shape, or form, lifeblood of the engine is gratitude. They start with a level of gratitude in some way, shape, or form. They have a healthy sense of ego, healthy sense, and they have gratitude towards whatever they have. Now, you might say somebody is like, I know wealthy people that don't have gratitude. They might have levels of gratitude. Deep down, they might be dysfunctional in one, but that's in spite of their success. Their level of gratitude usually is the lifeblood, the engine that helps them be successful in the long run.
Michael, let's do rapid fire questions. Answer in 30 seconds or less. Number one, your top must read book for entrepreneurs.
Uh, there's two. I can't, well, I like the 48 Laws of Power. I've had Robert Greene, who wrote the book, on my podcast. Uh, and Dale Carnegie's Think and Grow Rich. I know it's a cliche, but it's such a good book. So those two books, the 48 Laws of Power, can be used for good or evil. Um, and I would also, you got to throw in any book that Tony Robbins. I just love Tony. I've met him a couple times, and I hate to be like such a uber about him, but look, that's a good start business with personal development. And then Dale Carnegie, Think and Grow Rich. Um, the Purple Cow. There's so many good books. The first book I ever read was on selling, was Tom Hopkins on selling. When I was 17 or 18, I read that book. So that's a really good book on selling. It was done in the 80s, but it's still good. So I would start there, but I would not. I would just start reading. Yeah, this is the great. Can I give you a great hack? Want to hear a really good, fun hack, guys? It's so easy to get content these days. Anybody listening right now, if you guys like listening to audio, like I have a 10-acre property, so sometimes I'll do my own lawn, but I hate wasting time. So I'll do what I call net time, right? I'll listen to audio content while I'm mowing. So you can do this. You can chat GBT the greatest points of any book, and then have ChatGPT take that script, and then take that, and then you put it into a voice activator. Like the voice you hear on like Instagram. There's always like a video, and it's like, how many times you want to, that voice, and have that guy's voice in an audio file. I created just yesterday 46 minutes of some of my greatest, books that I wanted to spend time on. And I said, I don't have time. I just want the meat. I just want the bullet points. I also wanted to read it, to listen to it over and over again. So it gets my nervous system. So it's like second nature. And I told ChatGPT this. And here's the last bit of hack. I said, my ChatGPT knows me really well because it's got the memory and the archives, right? I said, I also want it to take my goals for the next 2 to 3 years, and I want it to bullet point some of the actions that we've gone over, and I want it to put it in script form for me to listen back on audio. So I listened to it after that. I haven't done it yet. I'm supposed to listen to this what it prepared for me in the next couple days. But I would say read as much as you can. Those are my books that I suggested. But also, what a great day and age. You can just like a robot, like you can create your own like destiny with like all this content. I would try that hack. I think I'm looking forward to trying it myself.
That was a bit more than 30 seconds, Michael. Let's try it again. One habit that has been a game changer for your productivity.
Habit has been my game changer for productivity. Uh, Trigger and response, making sure that I have internal dialogue, working it like a muscle to where I'm constantly asking myself empowering questions as opposed to disempowering questions. And then coming up with an incantation, which is basically telling myself, I can do this, I will do this, this is why I can do this, count to my blessings, this is what I've done in the past, this is why I'm going to do this is how I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now, I'm going to do it, give myself a date. And I kind of like, you know, when I really need, when I'm really down, I will use incantations with empowering questions, and that will lead me in the right direction. It'll move your blood, and you'll be able to take action immediately.
Best piece of advice you've ever received.
I just heard somebody ask that question on an Instagram post the other day. I was like, that's a good question. I never asked that myself on my podcast. Peter Goober, to name drop, I was dating his daughter. This is the best piece of advice. It was one of the first piece of advice. Um, and it's so simplistic, but really think about it when I tell it to you. I was sitting at a restaurant. He gave me some time. Said, "Well, let's talk to Mike," because I was, he was trying to help me. They liked me. I was 22 years old. He goes, I was a nightclub promoter at the time, and he says, "So you're promoting these clubs. So what's your long term? What do you want to do?" I said, eventually, I guess I'd like to own the nightclub. He goes, "Why'd you do that?" I said, "Well, I'm trying." He goes, "Hey, look, there was a pencil on the table." I was like, "Look at this pencil." He's like, "Move that pencil." So I moved the pencil. He goes, "Did you try to do that or just did it?" I said, "I know what you're doing. You're playing semantics here. I know it's easier for you, big old, you know, billionaire. You're telling me, just move the pencil." But it's true. If you start to think about things like, why didn't I just do that? Why not ask myself questions that say I can do this, I will do this, it's just a matter of time and effort if I really want to do it. So just move the pencil. That's the best advice I ever got.
Your favorite productivity tool or app?
Well, the one I just told you, that's a pretty cool one. I mean, come on, you could read all these books, you just bullet point it, and then you could just kind of tailor it towards your action items. That's a pretty damn good hack, if I do so say. I'm telling you, if that's my number one hack right now. ChatGPT, anything, and bullet point, just the key points of that content. So you're not spending a lot of time on getting that information. Now, of course, you might need to read it to understand it. But once you understand it, bullet point it, and then tailor ChatGPT with your actions on what you need to do. It's a great time and place. You're tailor making your destiny. All you need to do now is just follow through with it. It's just take step A to step Z. If you don't do those steps, that's on you. But at least you had the best coach, an AI coach, to help you, in that process. That's my
One last rapid question. What's one thing most people don't know about you?
well, I know I'm Jewish. They um they don't know. I gotta tell you, it's such an open book. I don't know what people don't know about me because I put it all online. They, they know that I'm insecure. Still, that's what they don't know. I still can get insecure because right now, after all this, and that never goes away. That's okay. I'm confident about being insecure. That's the difference. But people might be surprised to know that I still have insecurities, and here's the secret, everybody. Everybody does. Tony Robbins has insecurities. Everybody's got insecurities, but I have them too. So maybe people don't know that because we do podcasts. You seem like, Santiago might seem like those, guy because he's the podcast guy. He's like doing all this content, right? No, we're all insecure. We're all just trying to find uh, the fulfillment through our six human needs. And the last thing I'll say, I'm a lover. Like if I never get tired. They might think I get tired. That's the second thing. If somebody saw me on the street or an old friend, I went to my 40 high school reunion. And people would think, well, Mike's got a lot going on, so he doesn't care as much to really. You're surprised, about how I'm so happy to give someone a hug. I'm so happy to see somebody and find out what they're doing. I do not get tired of people. So those are the two things. I still get some insecure, and I might sound needy, but I really love people. I love their interests. Even somebody that might be, adverse to my interests. Be interesting to see if we can meet common ground, you know, somewhere somehow. That's my secrets.
Michael, for those who want to learn more about you, your work, and connect with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Go to michaelsteinmedia.com. It shows the podcast, the LongShot Leaders podcast. We got a new one coming out, the DIY Not, which is do-it-yourself projects, which is sponsored by my company Tosh Plus, and then Bolator, which is my new backpack brand. We talk about outdoor adventure stories, and you can see my bio there and the events and things that are coming up.
And I want to thank you so much for this inspiring conversation. Get to learn you a bit more. The depth of your answers, it's something special. I'm living with this, with your kindness. And the last bit about being vulnerable and still being nervous, it's something I think a lot of people like me will take away. Thanks a million, Michael.
Pleasure. Thank you.
If you're into data, productivity, and working smarter, not harder, check out my newsletter, Cut the Hype, Cache the Data. Every week I send you quick tips, tools, and insights you can actually use. No fluff, just results. Sign up in 10 seconds at santiagotacoronte.substack.com. That is santiagotacoronte.substack.com. Thanks for listening to Productivi-Tree. I hope you found something useful in today's episode. If you did, and it helps improve your life even a tiny bit, that'll make me really happy. Remember, you can find Productivi-Tree on all major podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you enjoyed the show, why not share it with a friend who might also find it helpful? Until next time, and keep growing and stay productive.